where I'm worried the most. A successful electronics and computing sector requires a lot of different labor price points because the person who does the plastic molding is not the person who does the die cast or pulls the wire or builds the chip or does the software or polishes the lenses. That's a different step with a different skill set at a different price point. And one of the many reasons that the East Asians are so good at this is you've got 11 different labor sets within one extended market. And they can all specialize at what they do best. We don't have that in North America. We have 2 price points. Us, Mexico, that's it. And so we have to change how this is all done. The textiles example gives me hope that we can, but I have no idea in hell how, because we haven't had to figure it out yet. But we're gonna have to, real soon. And we probably are going to have to do it without northern Mexico, because that's already spoken for. And here's where things get a little messy. Not all semiconductors are made equal. We all hear about the CHIPS Act and what the Biden administration wants to do. That's for a very, very specific kind of chip. 10 nanometer and smaller, the most advanced one in the world. Now, today, 92% of those come from Taiwan, 8% from South Korea. If every facility that is under construction in the United States because of the CHIPS Act ultimately comes to fruition, we will be making less than 5% of the global total. It's a start, it's not huge. The Koreans and the Taiwanese have been working on this for a long time. Here's the problem. The Taiwanese manufacture most of them, they fabricate most of them, but most of the technology that allows them to do so is not Taiwanese. They just have the end production. There's a coalition of over 9,000 companies worldwide, half of which only produce one product for one customer that ends up in a Taiwanese facility. You pull any of those out of the constellation, the whole thing stops until you repair the constellation. We're going to have to rebuild an entire environment in order to continue putting these chips together. That's going to take a decade. All it takes is one country falling out. I'm personally most concerned about the Germans on this one. Now, on the other extreme, you've got the dumb chips, the 90 nanometer and bigger. This is your Internet of Things, your smart blender, the shower brush that sings to you, your smart lights. 80% of those are made by the Chinese, and they can do that without outside help. The other 20% is kind of a split between Japan and the United States. Now, if the Chinese were to vanish tomorrow, obviously the Internet of Things would just die. I would argue that's not that big of a deal. And we have the technology, we have the knowledge. We don't have to reinvent anything. We just need a couple years to build low-end fab facilities. The Mexicans are very interested in getting into that space. The problem that they face is bilingual technical language skills. If you've got kids who are looking for a way to make a lot of money really quick, tell them to learn how to assemble chips and to do it in Spanish and go down there and be translators, because that is going to be the single biggest friction point in the bilateral relationship for the next decade or two. And then everything in the middle, 10 to 90, that's your car. That's your planes. That's most power management systems. That's smart meters. We're probably okay there, because those are made in Germany and Italy and here, in Japan and Korea, Taiwan, even a little bit in China with imported gear. That looks okay. It's the high end I'm really worried about, because those high end chips, that's AI. All these server farms are getting built to do AI at scale. No, we're not going to have the chips for it. That's the iPhone. We're not going to have the chips for them. That's electric vehicles. Electric vehicles have 2 to 3 grand worth of chips, and they're all either the very high end or the very low end. We won't be able to sustain it, and everything that comes from it. Now, for you guys as world more specifically, here's your lives. Yeah, there's no way to fix that fast. Order from everyone? Find a way? Counting on half of them not making it. That's the biggest sticking point you guys have by far. This doesn't look that great either. This is space that the Chinese dominate utterly, and replacing that at scale is not a 2-year program. It's not just the manufacturer. The assembly requires a lot of fingers and eyes and a lot of quality control, and there is no other country in the world that can step into that space quickly. So we're talking about a significant build out that's not just capital intensive, but is very labor intensive, and it is not clear where, if that can happen with today's technology. This stuff we kind of do in our sleep. Oops. It's advancing on my cheat screen, but it's not advancing on the big one. Do you guys need to do it manually from now on? There's a disconnect. They keep inviting me to events, and I'm like, no. Okay, there we go. Okay, the stuff in the middle. Oh, sorry, no, let me, this is the stuff we do in our sleep. The United States is a weird economy in that we're very, very high end and very, very low end at the same time. We have a lot of elbow room, we have a lot of forest, we have a lot of wood, and courtesy of the shale industry, we have a lot of things that are energy intensive, that we're the world's most competitive. None of that's in danger. And this is the stuff that the Mexicans are going to be helping us with. The slower China breaks down, the more time we have to build the industrial plant that we need to give you guys the guts of what you need. But that means working with the Mexicans as forward-looking as possible to build the stuff out so we don't start the day that stuff from China just vanishes. Oops. There we go. My biggest concern about China is the information block in there has now become so intense that we just can't get information at all. And we might not find out that the government has collapsed until the stuff just stops arriving. We're not going to have a lot of... All kinds of weird stuff is happening down here now. Can you guys bounce it forward for me? There we go. All right, I showed you guys this last year, population density map on this side, economic map on this side. The areas that are populated are also the areas that are economically viable. It's a pure weather thing. Russia has weather. People live where it's left. The Russian strategy is pretty straightforward. Expand out of the weather or the area that's decent until you hit a series of geographic barriers that you can't shove tanks through. And then forward position your military in the access points between them. Ukraine is in the unfortunate position of not controlling those access points, but it's on the way to one in Romania and one in Poland. So whenever the Russians are done with Ukraine, if they can win, they will move on to the next line of countries, 5 of which are in NATO. American, Western foreign policy is very simple. Prevent them from having that opportunity. Now, here we have the Ukrainian demographics. After independence in 1992, over a third of the population either left or died. Some of the lowest birth rates we've ever seen. Another third of the population since the war has fled as refugees, mostly women and children. So this is pre-war data. We're very close to the point in Ukraine where they will not have the population density that is required to maintain industrial level infrastructure. So whether it is food or steel or coal or just stuff transiting, Ukraine is not going to survive the next 30 years, even if they win the war.